Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're getting into a really powerful novel, Christy Lefteri's The Beekeeper of Aleppo.
Yeah, it's one that really sticks with you. It's got a lot of buzz, mainly because it takes the huge, almost abstract idea of the Syrian refugee crisis
Right.
and brings it right down to the very personal, emotional story of two people.
Nuri, who is the beekeeper, and Afra, his wife. We've looked at, well, a whole stack of discussion guides, some detailed literary analysis, really trying to get to the heart of it. The core question, I think, is how these characters, Nuri and Afra, and maybe the systems around them too, how they cope with just, well, unspeakable trauma.
It's definitely a journey into coping mechanisms, following them from Aleppo after everything is destroyed all the way to the UK. And the analysis we've seen really digs into this idea of sight or lack of sight as a way of understanding that coping.
Before we really dive in, though, we should probably mention this is it's difficult material.
It is, yeah.
The novel is very direct, very honest about the realities of war, of being displaced.
So, just a heads up for you listening. The sources do highlight depictions of violence, bombings, death, and also sexual assault. It doesn't shy away.
No, it doesn't. But the reason we're exploring it is because it offers such a profound look at resilience, at the human spirit.
Exactly. So, our kind of mission today is to unpack this central puzzle. Nuri and Afra share this horrific journey, but their trauma often seems to isolate them from each other. How do they find their way back, if they do?
And that journey really begins in the absolute wreckage of their lives in Syria. Specifically, after the death of their son, Sammy, he's killed in a bombing.
Yeah.
When we first meet them, they're just shadows of themselves, barely functioning. But they seem to be handling it differently.
That's a key point the discussion guides raise, who seems stronger at the start.
Right. And initially, you might think it's Nuri. He's the one making plans, the one thinking about logistics, how to get out. He seems on the surface more practical, whereas Afra seems broken, almost passive. But her resistance to leaving Syria, that's actually a really interesting layer. It reveals a kind of strength, doesn't it? A different kind.
Absolutely. Her reluctance isn't just fear of the journey, it's tied directly to Sammy.
There's that line, it's just devastating, where she tells Nuri, if we stay, we'll die.
Yeah.
That I'll stop waiting, I won't leave him, meaning Sammy.
That quote is everything for understanding her mindset early on. Staying feels like the only way to remain connected to her son, to his memory. It's a form of devotion, almost.
But that devotion, that pull towards the past, it creates this huge rift between her and Nuri.
A massive one. And you see it physically, too. Nuri talks about how hard it is to maintain contact, emotional or even physical contact with Afra during the journey.
It's not that the love is gone, you feel that it's still there, but it's like this chasm of grief has opened up between them, and they're experiencing it so differently.
He's trying to look forward to escape while she's almost anchored to the tragedy they're leaving behind.
And that forward momentum Nuri has, it's almost entirely fueled by one specific hope. One person, really.
Mustafa. His cousin, his friend, another beekeeper.
Yes. Mustafa isn't just a destination, like a place to get to in the UK. He represents something much bigger for Nuri.
He's the anchor. The analysis points out how Mustafa consistently gives Nuri something to hope for. He's like Nuri's North Star through all the darkness.
And it's a very specific hope tied to who Nuri is. Mustafa paints this picture of the UK, almost idyllic.
Right. Full of flowers, so much green, specifically mentioning heather and lavender, things bees need.
Exactly. For a beekeeper like Nuri, green, flowers, that means life. It means survival, a chance for the bees, and maybe for them too, a real future.
That promise is incredibly powerful. It's what gets Nuri through some truly awful experiences, which makes something quite puzzling.
What's that?
Well, if Mustafa is this beacon of hope, this lifeline, why doesn't Nuri contact him immediately when they finally arrive in the UK?
That's a great point. You'd imagine that's the very first thing he'd do. Find a phone, call Mustafa.
But he doesn't. And the analysis suggests this points to something deeper happening within Nuri.
Like the shock of arrival, the bureaucracy, the hostile environment, maybe just shuts that hope down temporarily.
Partly that, yes. The sheer psychological weight of having arrived, of being processed. But it also seems to point towards Nuri's own internal, his own kind of blindness.
Which connects to the character of Muhammad.
Precisely. Muhammad is this huge complication in the narrative.
Yeah, as a reader, you're kind of going, wait, who is this boy? Where did he come from? He seems to appear and disappear.
What the author, Lefteri, seems to be doing here is showing us Nuri's coping mechanism, or maybe defense mechanism, playing out.
So Muhammad isn't real.
The analysis strongly suggests Muhammad is an imaginary stand-in for Sammy, for Nuri's lost son.
Wow.
And the relationship Nuri has with this imaginary boy, Muhammad, it reveals just how deep Nuri's denial runs, how unable he is at that point to truly face Sammy's death.
So Muhammad is like a shield. He lets Nuri keep functioning, keep moving, without having to actually look at the unbearable grief.
The ultimate act of denial. Which brings us neatly, I think, to the novel's central symbol.
Blindness.
Exactly. This is the big one, the key takeaway from all the analysis. Blindness in this book isn't just literal physical blindness.
It stands for something bigger. The refusal to see, the refusal to acknowledge suffering, denial.
And Afra's literal blindness is the most obvious manifestation of this.
Right. She loses her sight in the immediate aftermath of the bombing, witnessing Sammy's death.
And the doctor they see in England confirms it's psychosomatic. Her body, her mind just completely shut down the faculty of sight as a way to cope with something too horrific to process.
That's incredible. A profound physical reaction to trauma. Her eyes, Nuri describes them as gray stones, sea stones, almost dead-looking.
Yeah, he fears them. They represent this barrier she's put up against the pain, against her post-traumatic reality. She literally cannot look at it.
Okay, so that's Afra's literal blindness, but then there's Nuri.
Nuri, who can physically see, but the argument is that he's the one who's truly blind, figuratively speaking. Well, throughout the novel, he keeps expressing this wish to unsee things, the horrors he's witnessed on the journey. He almost thinks blindness might be preferable in a world filled with so much suffering.
His sight feels like a burden, a curse.
Yes. And his main figurative blindness, it's Muhammad.
The imaginary boy.
Creating Muhammad allows him to navigate the world without actually seeing the truth of his own grief, the reality of his present without Sammy.
So Afra is literally blind, but maybe starting to process internally, while Nuri is sighted but actively refusing to see the emotional truth.
That's the core paradox, and it leads to this incredibly powerful moment where Afra, the blind one, sees Nuri's state more clearly than he does himself.
When she says to him, what is it?
She says, "You are lost in the darkness, Nuri."
Wow. Basically telling him his internal figurative blindness is worse, is more damaging than her literal lack of sight.
Exactly. She might be physically in the dark, but he's lost in a different, perhaps deeper, darkness of denial. She's confronting the grief in her own way, maybe passively through her body's reaction, while he's actively pushing it away, outsourcing it to Muhammad.
And the turning point, the sign of potential healing, comes when that starts to shift.
Right. Towards the end of the novel, Afra's sight begins to return. Little flickers at first. It suggests she's starting to maybe accept the trauma, integrate it.
While Nuri, at the same time, is finally forced to confront the reality of Sammy's absence, to let go of Muhammad. He has to face his own internal darkness.
And this idea of blindness, of refusing to see, it doesn't just apply to Nuri and Afra.
No, the analysis points out how it extends to the systems they encounter, what you called institutional blindness.
Yeah, think about the secondary characters, the border guards, the immigration officials.
Even Lucy Fisher, the caseworker who seems sympathetic, but is still part of the system.
They often view Nuri and Afra less as suffering individuals and more as, well, cases. Files to be processed, problems to be managed.
It's a kind of willful blindness, isn't it? A refusal to truly witness their humanity, their pain.
The text mentions specifically that immigration officers sometimes refuse to look Nuri in the eye during his interview.
Why? Because really seeing his suffering would make their job harder. It would require empathy, engagement.
Perhaps it would complicate the bureaucratic process. Looking away, keeping that distance, is part of how the system functions, but it's dehumanizing. That refusal to look is a form of blindness.
Which makes the ending, those final lines, just hit so hard.
Oh, yeah. Afra's sight is returning. She's starting to see colors, shapes.
And she asks Nuri to close his eyes.
Yeah, close his eyes and try to see the bees. Not literally, but to feel them, sense their presence, the hope they represent.
And he struggles. He can't quite do it.
And then she says it. "You think it's me who can't see?"
Just devastating. She's saying he was so caught up in seeing the horrors of the past, the visual reality of loss, that he couldn't perceive the hope, the future, the essence of life symbolized by the bees.
Even with her sight still impaired, she's the one truly seeing their potential future, while his sighted eyes were stuck looking backwards.
Such powerful storytelling. And it makes sense when you learn a bit about the author, Christy Lefteri. Her background really informs this.
Absolutely. She was raised in London, but her parents are Greek Cypriot refugees.
They fled Cyprus during the Turkish invasion in 1974.
So the themes of displacement, loss, refuge, they're part of her family history, her heritage.
And the research for this specific book, The Beekeeper, wasn't just reading books. It was very hands-on.
Right. She actually spent time volunteering at a UNICEF-supported refugee center in Athens.
Working directly with Syrian families making journeys just like Nuri and Afra's.
So she heard these stories firsthand. She witnessed the trauma, the hope, the resilience.
And interestingly, she's also training to be a psychotherapist.
Which completely tracks, right?
Yeah.
The way she portrays trauma, denial, dissociation, it feels incredibly nuanced, psychologically accurate. It's not just literary flair. There's a deep understanding of the human mind under duress.
It really comes through. Which leads to a bigger question, one the discussion guides raise too. Can reading a novel like this, a fictional account, give you a different kind of understanding of the refugee crisis compared to, say, watching the news?
Oh, I definitely think so. The material suggests a strong yes. News reports, almost by necessity, focus on facts, numbers, the big picture. Often, they maintain a certain distance.
Keep it objective.
Right. But fiction, especially a novel written with this kind of intimacy and psychological depth, does the opposite. It forces you inside the experience.
You're not just hearing about refugees, you're walking in Nuri's shoes. You feel the cold, the fear, the exhaustion, the impossible choices.
It builds empathy in a way statistics just can't. You connect with the human cost on an emotional level, not just an intellectual one. You internalize it differently.
It bypasses the sort of compassion fatigue we can get from endless news cycles.
Exactly. And if this resonates with you, Lefteri has other works that explore similar themes of marginalization and giving voice to the voiceless.
Like Songbirds.
Yeah, Songbirds, which was inspired by the real-life disappearance of a domestic worker from Sri Lanka looking at race and class. And also A Watermelon, a Fish, and a Bible, which goes back to her roots, set during the 1974 Cyprus invasion.
So she's clearly committed to these kinds of stories. Okay, so wrapping up the core ideas here. The Beekeeper of Aleppo uses this harrowing physical journey as a frame for an equally harrowing internal one.
Right. A journey of battling trauma, primarily through the mechanism of denial.
And that denial is symbolized so powerfully by blindness. Afra's literal blindness, Nuri's figurative blindness, and even the institutional blindness of the systems they encounter.
But ultimately, there's hope. Symbolized by the bees, by Afra regaining her sight, by Nuri starting to confront his grief, the potential for new life.
If you're listening and want to read more authors who tackle similar themes with this kind of emotional weight, the Who Else Writes Like resource suggests looking at Khaled Hosseini.
Obvious connection there, yeah.
Heather Morris, who wrote The Tattooist of Auschwitz.
Another heavy hitter, exploring trauma and survival.
And Elif Shafak.
Yes. Great writers exploring complex human stories, often touching on displacement and identity.
And since we've talked so much about Nuri and the bees, we found a little something extra in the source material, a recipe.
Ah, yes. Lavender-infused honey. A nice, simple connection back to the natural world, back to that symbol of hope.
Sounds lovely. How do you make it?
It's really straightforward. You just take about a cup of honey, put it in a saucepan over medium heat, add about 2 tablespoons of dried lavender.
Okay.
Bring it to a very gentle boil, then let it infuse off the heat for maybe 5 minutes. The warmth helps release the lavender oils into the honey.
Smells good already.
Then you just strain it through a fine mesh sieve into a jar or container, get the lavender bits out, and let it cool completely uncovered.
A simple, kind of restorative thing to do. Connects back to that world Nuri's trying to reach.
A little bit of sweetness and calm. Okay, so as we finish up, we wanted to leave you with one final thought, a really challenging moral question that comes up in the reading guides, stemming from Nuri's journey.
Yeah, this one's tough. At one point, facing extreme circumstances and abuse, Nuri plays a role in the death of another character, Nadim, who is exploiting people.
It's a moment of absolute desperation. So the question for you to think about is, in that kind of life or death situation, driven by the need to protect himself and Afra, do you condemn Nuri's actions or do you understand them? Maybe even agree with them?
It's not an easy question. There's no simple answer. Something to mull over.